Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm an introvert. When I told one of my friends that I was going to be giving a TED Talk on introversion in front of over 100 people, he said that it'd be a great way to help me overcome my introversion. I think he missed the point. Introversion is not something to overcome. It's a personality trait. And while some of us may be shy and reserved, not all of us have a fear of public speaking. In fact, introversion is one of the most commonly misunderstood personality traits in today's society. Most people don't guess that I'm an introvert because A, I'm a debater, B, I talk a lot in class, and C, I'm a mildly socially adept human being. However, not a single one of these traits defines my identity as either an introvert or an extrovert. In order to accurately understand the distinction between introversion and extroversion, I like to use an analogy of robots. If people were robots, introverts would need to recharge their batteries by plugging into themselves while being alone, whereas extroverts would need to plug into the rest of the world for a jolt of robot-to-robot interaction. To clarify, introversion is different from being shy. Shyness is an uncomfortable fear of social judgment, and it can be overcome, whereas introverts feel perfectly comfortable being alone and in small groups. In fact, we prefer it. So in order to debunk some common misconceptions, here are some signs if you're an introvert. First, you find small talk incredibly cumbersome and would rather have deep conversations. Second, you like things that you can do on your own. And third, giving a talk in front of 200 people is less stressful than having to mingle with those people afterwards. If, like me, you answered yes to all three of these criteria, you're probably an introvert. Of course, introversion exists on a spectrum. On one end, there's the extrovert, who feels energized just by the thought of the next social gathering of over 500 people. And on the other end, there's the introvert, who would much rather be alone all the time. And in the very middle, there's the ambivert, who is equal parts introverted and extroverted. Of course, unless any of us here are complete psychopaths, we probably don't fall on either extreme, but we lie somewhere in between on the spectrum. The key to maximizing our success is to understand where we lie on this spectrum. Otherwise, we might be spending too much time socializing in order to fit what we believe is the ideal behavior, or spend too much time alone, exhausting ourselves. The problem is that many of us simply don't know whether we are introverted or extroverted. I didn't know that I was an introvert until the beginning of this school year when I took the Myers-Briggs personality test that labeled me as an introvert. Of course, as one of the most talkative, outspoken members of the debate team, I assumed that this quiz was probably wildly inaccurate. But after looking at the other scientific research and other personality tests out there, every single one of them identified me as an introvert. So after contemplation, this made sense to me, because I feel excited and energized in small group discussions. But when everybody talks in a free-for-all, I just feel drained and exhausted. This doesn't mean that I'm unwilling to socialize with others, but just that large group socialization needs to be balanced with relatively more small group socialization and more alone time. But it took me 16 years to learn that I'm not an extrovert. And when I conducted my own Google survey of over 150 people, despite the fact that more than half of them self-identified as introverts, most of them thought that the majority of their peers were extroverts. Take a look. Considering that most of us don't spontaneously switch between introversion and extroversion, why do we falsely assume that most of our peers are extroverts? Well, when one teacher administered a personality test to his 5th grade students, according to the results on the test, not a single one of them was an introvert. This could mean one of two things. Either that the surveyed class of 60 students is the most extroverted class to ever exist, or that introversion is clearly stigmatized in our country. I think that the latter is probably the more logical explanation. You see, when students fill out the survey administered by the teacher, they feel obligated to select the right choice and are reluctant to answer in a manner that they think society would deem unhealthy. For example, a question that asked, would you rather go to a party or stay at home reading a book? To the 5th graders, might as well have asked, would you rather be cool, popular, and successful, or weird, isolated, and a failure. Many people simply don't publicly identify as introverts because it's seen as a less desirable trait, whereas extroversion is seen as the normal human default. This also explains why 71% of the people that I surveyed said that they would rather be an extrovert. This means that almost half of the self-identified introverts would rather be extroverts, while only 2 of the 70-something extroverts would rather be introverts. What's more is that when I Googled introversion, one of the first hits on Google was a webpage titled How to Go from Introversion to Extroversion, and another one on how to promote yourself to an extrovert. Needless to say, there wasn't a single webpage teaching extroverts how to demote themselves to introverts. And while I wouldn't say that anonymously published WikiHow web pages paint the whole picture of societal biases, as recently as 2010, the American Psychiatric Association even considered classifying introverted personality as a mental disorder. This should be a wake-up call. Extroversion is seen as the ideal, and just as it is often said that we live in a man's world, it can similarly be said that we live in an extrovert's world. It is common to hear parents and teachers prodding young children to come out of their shells, but we tend to forget that some animals in nature carry shells with them wherever they go. It provides them with free shelter and free protection. And while we don't blame turtles for exhibiting introverted traits, when the same behavioral trait is exhibited in humans, it's seen as weird and undesirable, and the whole world needs to band together to fix us and show us how to promote ourselves to extroverts. Well, introversion isn't a character flaw, and it's not a disorder. It's a personality trait. And according to research, it's a personality trait that's proven to tend to be more intelligent, earn better grades, more creative, and better listeners. But when we look at the larger picture, as a result of our obsession with extroversion, our surroundings, including our classrooms, our workplaces, and our social gatherings, all become tailored only to nurture the extrovert ideal. In classrooms, desks are moving closer and closer together to form pods of 4 or 5 students in order to encourage group work and collaboration, while social media constantly berates us to adopt louder, larger-than-life personalities. But the problem with living only in an extrovert's world of group work is that we constantly follow the most dominant individual, the loudest one, and we lose the voices of those who simply get lost in all the noise, forgetting that there is zero correlation between who talks the loudest and who possesses the smartest ideas. Now, I'm not calling for the abolition of all teamwork and collaboration, but we need to become more aware of our varying personality traits so that we can strike a better balance between nurturing introverts and nurturing extroverts. In fact, according to Psychology Today, the most successful marriages are those between one introvert and one extrovert. Just look to the business partnership between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak, the introvert, spent hours upon hours alone in his cubicle at Hewlett-Packard inventing the Apple computer where he felt most comfortable, while Steve Jobs, the extrovert, marketed Wozniak's computer and started Apple corporations. Computers as we know them today would not exist without the contributions of either of these individuals. Yet when we focus only on nurturing the extrovert ideal, we lose the voices of introverts like Steve Wozniak, as well as their contributions to society. So I guess my main message is, you do you. Understand your own personality traits, not just what you think other people will find desirable. This will not only make us happier, healthier, and more unique individuals, but it will also make us more successful. Think about how your introversion or extroversion affects your time management, your social interactions, because the key to maximizing our individual success is tailoring our surroundings and our environments to the zone of stimulation that's right for us. Recently, I found that planning my schedule around small gatherings and alone time is more effective than planning it around large gatherings, because it ensures that I have enough time for reflection so that I don't get too exhausted from the external stimulation, and so that I actually stick to my meticulously crafted schedule. At the end of the day, I think Susan Cain, who pioneered the discussion on introversion, frames the issue best. According to her, the key to life is to put yourself in the right lighting. For some people, that means a Broadway spotlight, and for others, it means a lamplit desk. Personally, I'd much rather be debating, talking to, and socializing with my peers from the lamplit desk. Thank you.